Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And hello to everybody. I am Dr. Muhammad Umar Quddoos Attari, PH.D. Management Sciences and Associate Fellow of Higher Education Academy, UK. I am serving as Assistant Professor at the Department of Commerce, Bahauddin Zakariy University, Multan, Pakistan. I am going to present our latest research in the topic analyzing the nexuses between carbon emissions trade, openness transport services, globalization index, and growth in China, targeting the sustainable development goals. Background. The contemporary challenges posed by ever-increasing global warming have now become the topmost vital agenda and debated topical issue since the emergence of 21st millennium and the Sustainable Development Agenda launched by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030. The Climate Change Conference COP26 held by the United Nations in Glasgow, United Kingdom in 2021, represented by over 200 countries, emphasized the need to pursue the target of global net zero emissions by 2030 and resolve upon maintaining the global temperature rise within 1.5 Celsius degrees by 2050. It is pertinent to mention here that COP26 did succeed in recording the commitments of over 153 countries for embarking upon the requisite action plans given the nationally determined contributions, NDCs, representing about 80% of the world's GHG emissions, greenhouse gas. Now, we here see the vital inverse U-shaped nexus of development and environmental degradation. The EKC is based on an inverted U-shaped curve created by Quddoos in 1955. It was initially designed to study the relationship between income per capita and income inequality. The EKC became more popular when the inverted U shape started to be adopted in the environmental studies. Besides the finding that quite a limited number of study investigations have addressed the impact of transportation, financial globalization, and the level of carbon-based emissions on the economic growth, and that too with inconsistent results, the nexus between carbon-based emissions, financial globalization, trade openness, transportation, and economic growth still goes unexplored. This study aims to investigate this research gap, and the hypotheses that were formulated are also given in this slide. Further, there needs to be more literature on the impact of trade openness and the carbon-based emissions on the economic growth in China. The study significance thus can be described that this study is envisaged to make significant contributions towards targeting the following SDGs, that is SDG 8, economic growth prospects, SDG 9, industrial infrastructure and innovation, SDG 11, creating sustainable communities, SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. The econometric technique that is applied in our study, that time series data for the period from 1982 to 2020 was extracted from World Development Indicators, the International Union of Railway, UIC, the International Monetary Fund, and Global Economy. And the economic model, the study used an autoregressive distributive lag ARDL-based vector error correction model based on the econometric techniques on this slide, and the summary correlations that resulted from our analysis are: we performed the log transformation of variables first to overcome the problem of heteroscedasticity and to avoid the significant values of regression coefficients. Then we calculated the descriptive statistics and correlation coefficient of all variables used in this study. These tables show that the data is symmetrical, and owing to the significance of a few series at the level and others at the first difference, we applied the Ardell model. The results of the unit 2 test are also reported, and it is revealed that the series stands as non-stationary. The next table displays the findings of the short run and long run estimators that our model results of long run and short run with the growth of GDP as dependent variable. The estimation results demonstrate that carbon-based emissions negatively affect the growth of per capita GDP in China. It leads to the inference that the enhanced carbon-based emissions reduce the per capita growth of GDP through health hazards, increased health budgets, resulting productivity losses, and allied environmental costs. A few explanations could be offered for this phenomena. The negative rapid might occur through the channels of energy preserving and low carbon based technological ameliorations in the Chinese economy. There could be a likelihood that the rising carbon emissions might cause an increase in the cost of goods and services and disrupting the supply chains. And finally, the reverse connection may replicate the likelihood of the country's wasteful and disproportionate use of carbon-based emissions. And these results are also in line with many empirical studies. And next, we see that the transportation services also have impact on the economic growth. The undoubtedly infrastructure facilities taking the form of logistics and transport services have been the most substantial and basic cause of carbon-based emissions. The results on the relationship between transport services and trade openness with GDP per capita growth are positive and significant. This affirms that the trade-related and infrastructure facilities tend to boost the growth of per capita GDP in China. This finding is expected per se, since at developed infrastructure facilities, the mobility of labor, capital, raw material, and finished goods is increased. And this enhances the overall growth in the economy. Our next variable is the industrial value added. The industrial value added also has a significant impact on the growth of economy in the long run. While globalization also has positive significant impact on the per capita income growth in the long run. The short-run results show a negative impact of transport services on the GDP of China, and we report a positive effect of industrial value added on GDP in the long run. But in the short run, the coefficient of industrial value added is insignificant, and the coefficient of trade openness shows a negative sign, and these findings are in line with the findings of other researchers like Lee and V. 2021. Trade openness positively impacts the per capita GDP in the short run, while globalization exerts a significant impact on GDP. The long-run results of the trade openness variable reveal that a higher level of trade openness is coupled with low growth of per capita GDP, while the relationship stands as insignificant. However, several studies have revealed a solid backing for a positive association between trade openness and economic growth. The globalization phenomena is perceived as contributing positively towards the growth of GDP through positive spillovers, taking the form of approaching global equity markets, availing innovative business opportunities and investments, and free flow of quality labor across the globe. Next, we see the conclusions and some bond test estimations and diagnostic VECM stability tests were also calculated, and that justify our model. The carbon-based emissions negatively affect growth of per capita GDP in China, as well as was also reported by Gold, Raphael, Squally, Bahauddin, and Piney, and others. The conclusion is of our study. Estimated results reveal the fact that carbon emissions are affecting the growth of per capita GDP negatively in China. The infrastructure facilities like transport services have helped ensure the country's market access and economic growth. The variable for the railway line is positive in prompting per capita GDP growth in the country. The study further upholds the fact that the expansion of transport services leads to higher growth of GDP per capita. Given the role of industrial value added as a proxy for industrial development and a contributor to the GDP, it helps to augment the absorptive capacity of the economy. As such, the industrial value added has been contributing positively towards GDP growth in China. The globalization impacts per capita GDP growth positively in both the long run and the short run. This result is initiative to economic theory, since the Chinese economy is well connected with the rest of the world through international trade and inward FDI. Both trade and inward FDI have attracted manufacturing multinationals to the China, being a low-cost production location. Now, the policy implications of our study can be summarized as follows. Firstly, these results call for more prudent policy setting and shift towards the use of renewable sources of energy. Secondly, the government should provide incentives to manufacturers to move towards renewable energy sources. Thirdly, the policymakers need to encourage the use of renewable energy in intensive modes of transport. This will not only support the environment-friendly campaigns, rather will lead to a competitive supply chain process for firms in the economy. Fourthly, the China needs to develop renewable energy sources that could boost the manufacturing value added of different industries and generate employment to ensure sustainable, vigorous, and viable economic growth consistent with the agenda of the SDGs. And finally, the research results indicate that the Chinese economy has emerged as a beneficiary of globalization. Hence, the economy needs to pursue sound policies that would make these benefits sustainable in the long run. Thank you. And thanks a lot for allowing me this opportunity to present my research in this valuable conference.